Well, there's certainly a lot of smiling faces here today. So that's always a good occasion. And I can see some future employees right here in the back of the room. And we're pleased to have you here today. You know, one of the tendencies of a coverage of legislation is to try to establish in the public mind a kind of bill-by-bill addition or subtraction factor, as if bills pass in isolation and that they can be considered in an isolated way. Sometimes, to some degree, that makes some sense, gives some clarity of purpose, some vision of what the expectations might be, what the philosophy is behind it. But more often than not, and I'm speaking now, forgive me for those who are observing, to our legislative friends who are big in number here today, and speaking to you and with you as a colleague, as a former colleague. We understand, and I certainly understand, and that's why, particularly with HB 2096, that this is part of a picture that's being painted by the legislature. This is part of a tapestry, a legislative tapestry that's being woven at this time. And the fact that it is passing now means that another segment or another portion of that picture that's being painted, I'm doing pretty good on my metaphors so far, has taken place. Another stage has been reached. And that's really what this is. This bill is very, very important in and of itself, yes, no question about that. I'm sure there will be business people and employees all across the state that will be encouraged by today, because both elements, if you will, are being addressed. The business side itself, in terms of the savings, if you will, the prudent manner in which the legislature is dealing with this at this point, and employees who are going to be guaranteed a significant portion of funding to meet their bills and obligations and responsibilities should an unemployment situation occur. But this bill, and the reason it is passing right now, 2096 is passing right now, is that the legislature is sending a message to the entire state that we're prepared if circumstances decree that an unemployment compensation question has to be addressed, whether from the employer side or from the employee side, yes. But the reason we're passing it now is that the legislature, and the reason we're passing this particular approach to the unemployment insurance compensation fund and funding, is because the legislature at the same time is building and acting on, building upon the foundation that's been laid over the last year. A little bit more than a year now, as we're moving on, about the last year and a half, of moving from a deficit situation into a positive balance. And that the legislature is currently simultaneously working on bills and approaches and combinations of ideas that will result in continued prosperity, more jobs being provided. Unfortunately for Senator Kochi and some of the other folks, there'll be more jobs on Kauai than had been anticipated because of the cleanup that is required and so on. And that in itself is part of the legislative process. We have finance people here, we have labor people here, labor committee people, Ways and Means folks who understand that there is a political dynamic underway in any legislative session. And what I'm so pleased about is we're about halfway through the session. It's more than symbolic that the legislature is putting this legislation at the halfway point, because they're saying we're ready for an adverse contingency. And we're treating everybody fairly and squarely with regard to that. But this is in conjunction with the positive work that's being done in the legislature right now in job creation. Capital improvement legislation is moving right now. We have the lowest interest rates available to us in decades, certainly in my lifetime and probably in the lifetime of virtually anybody in the state right now, that we can take advantage of. And the legislature, I think, is working assiduously to get that put together. So this legislation is a pleasure for me to sign, because it's a recognition to me of the legislative process in action the way it's supposed to be. Today's legislation is really a lesson in civics for you young folks that are here right now. This is the way it's supposed to work. This is the way when you face a tough situation. No one likes to be out of work. I'm sure you want all your moms and dads and all your relatives and friends, you want them to have good jobs. You want them to be secure in their work. You want to be able to look forward to a good job and one that rewards the talents that you have and the contributions that you can make to Hawaii. But not always is that possible. And sometimes circumstances occur in which people are having a hard time. And that's been the case for some of your moms and dads and for some of your brothers and sisters and your cousins, your aunties and uncles. They've had maybe a tough time. And so they've had to have some support. That's what this is about. And at the same time, this legislature and the folks gathered here today in particular who have had the responsibility and the interest to see that this bill is here today, these folks here understand that we're trying to not only prepare ourselves, but then act in a responsible way to see to it that the good foundation that we've been building for the last year and a half is going to be continued and, in fact, built upon. So, with that in mind, I'm about to sign the bill. You guys all know what I'm going to do now? You know what that means? As soon as this gets signed, that means that everybody who brought you here today has to get you a big dessert when you leave. I think that's part of the deal. Wasn't that the small print? Wasn't that in a small print? Right. Or Chuck E. Cheese or something. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's in the bill. It's in there somewhere. Right. And by the way, I think it's important for everybody to know, this bill will apply retroactively to January 1st. Again, that's for the young folks in the room. That's what the legislature is doing. They're not just saying looking forward. They understand that this is something that had to be dealt with over time. But because the legislature didn't come into session until the middle of January, that they didn't have a chance to do it from the first of the year. So that's why it reads the way that it does. So here we go. This bill, 2096, and once again, thanks to all in this room who helped put this together from the requisite committees of having to do with money and labor. Very, very pleased to have it. It is a bill for an Act 2096 relating to employment security. And on this 9th day of March, 2012, it's now law. Congratulations.